That was such a wonderful discussion with the students at Sea Opportunity. It was so great to hear from those who've sailed on Falkor as students, and we look forward to seeing where their next stage of their journey takes them. Now I would like to welcome you to this session on managing a thriving ocean. I'm honored to introduce the moderator of this session, Ms. Kristina Gjerde. Kristina is the Senior High Seas Advisor for the International Union for Conservation of Nature and an adjunct professor at the Middlebury Institute of International Studies at Monterey, teaching international marine law and policy. She's a co-founder of the Deep Ocean Stewardship Initiative, also known as DOSI amongst many, and is interested in how we can use law, science, technology, and economics to manage the global ocean. To that end, she actively participates in the biodiversity beyond national jurisdictions negotiations at the UN and the negotiations on deep sea mining regulations at the International Seabed Authority. And in addition to all this, she is a Schmidt Ocean Institute Advisory Board member. Kristina, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Gjerde. It's been a pleasure to be joining all these conversations today, and it's my pleasure to be here with you to lead this amazing panel. As we've been hearing today, the global ocean is vital to life on Earth, but the ocean is also under increasing human pressures and the effects of climate change. To cope with these many pressures, many leading scientists and world governments are supporting a call to highly and fully protect at least 30% of our global ocean by 2030, and to ensure that it is 100% sustainably managed. But this is not proving to be so easy. Today, we are fortunate to have an amazing array of speakers, as I said, for our keynote and panel discussion, who will help shed some light on the importance of science to inform management and protection, the contributions that the Schmidt Ocean Institute and the Falkor have and continue to make, and to reveal some of the challenges and important partnership opportunities to help us all achieve the ambitious yet essential goals we need to meet to ensure a thriving ocean planet. To start off, I would like to introduce the keynote speaker, Viceminister Haydee Rodriguez-Romero. Ms. Haydee Rodriguez-Romero is Costa Rica's Vice Minister for Water and Ocean within the Ministry for the Environment and Energy. She is an environmental lawyer who has specialized in science and public policy with a passion for translating scientific evidence into sound policies to protect people and nature. Please, over to you, Heidi, Vice Minister.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. It is a great honor to be part of this panel and to be part of this event. Thank you very much. And I think one of the, our last conversation, we were seeing how we imagined this panel, and I really want to see this as an informal space to open up and tell you some of the challenges that we have trying to translate that science into policy from a very personal perspective. So here I'm here like an environmental lawyer whose life changed thanks to Falkor. And this is not only because as a kid I was a fan of the movie of Never Ending Story, but also because Falkor was the first time that I witnessed what was in the seabed, the magic in the ocean floor. So I studied law because I wanted to give voice and to defend my first passion, that it's the environment. But then after many years working with NGOs, and that's from the very beginning of my career, I realized that there is a need of understanding the science behind the environment, the story that tell us about the creatures and the different habitats. And that is why I wanted to mix and to combine my law studies with some science, and then trying to see how to translate that science into concrete public policy because if I wanted to give that voice to nature, that voice needed to understand the science that supported. So Sebastian told me the story of the seabed, and that was like a big window to a new world, a new dimension of creatures and landscapes beyond my imagination. And there I was thinking, oh my God, who is giving voice to all this life? And I think that's part of our duty as well. So seeing the seabed, seeing the beautiful ocean that we have in Costa Rica, for example, Isla del Caño, Corcovado, and my beautiful Isla del Coco, I think that there is a commitment, a responsibility to make sure that we are going to preserve these sites. And from my experience, I can tell you that being a decision maker is not easy. And now being a decision maker who really wants to change the way we approach to the ocean, the way that we manage marine resources is even harder. I believe that science should be in the core of environmental public policies, of course. However, the decisions are taken in different contexts, and they are going to have an impact in people. So here, science becomes fundamental to create different scenarios for decision makers to know what are the consequences and the possible impacts of these decisions in people and in the environment. And the work that many of you are doing, research and writing scientific papers, should pass from that computer and from your brains into the desk and the hands of the decision makers, the people who are really committed to change the world, and how to do that. And here I'm going to give you some examples of what are we doing in Costa Rica in order to translate and to incorporate that science into public policy. And a lot of that information from the Falcor here in Costa Rica, we are going to use for many decisions related with conservation of our ocean. Costa Rica is 92% ocean. We are almost like an island. We have so many biodiversity in our ocean, but in one hand, on land, we have protected almost 30% of our land, but in our ocean, we only protected less than 3%. So at the beginning of this administration, we were thinking, yes, we need science to take decisions, but we also need to change the way that institutions are working together to apply that science. So we need first to create a structure to translate that science into policy, to create coordination between different competences in the ministries. So we created a governance model where we have 5 different ministries, from environment to transit, transportation, tourism, and fisheries, obviously, working together in order to use scientific information to take decisions. But we needed to create that structure first. And that was I think the first step towards creating and integrating the science into our future in managing the ocean. And this governance mechanism is focusing in 3 main aspects. Blue economy, how we are going to actually see the ocean as hope, as part of this recovery, the blue recovery that we as a planet need after this COVID crisis and the biodiversity and climate crisis that we are living. So here we are working together with different technicians to see the different opportunities that we have in Costa Rica in order to create a blue recovery plan for the next 10 years. And then we are talking about marine spatial planning as well. And here also science is important. Where should we create new MPAs? How we are going to create networks of MPAs? Where are the sites where whales are moving around? How can we create transit routes for them, swimways for these migratory species? So the third element is law enforcement. And probably we'll think that law enforcement is just to follow up a rule. But in this case, in environmental law, in ocean science, we need to also understand the scientific part of the law that we are applying, working with the legal advisors, working with the judicial system in order to clarify some concepts that in the law school we even see it's fundamental if we really want to have this as a reality in the future. So Costa Rica is going to celebrate this year 200 years of independence, and we are looking for build a new Costa Rica. How should be Costa Rica in the future? And one of the things that is a big commitment for this administration is precisely how we are going to change the way of seeing the ocean, the way of interacting with the ocean. And we believe that the Costa Rica of the future should be a blue Costa Rica as well. And for that, we need that information that you have. We need that information that you as scientists produce. We need to understand the ocean as hope. And the more information we have in order to understand this, the more we can actually act to change some behaviors that we have had in the past. So Costa Rica is leading with France the 30 by 30 coalition, the HAC, the High Ambition Coalition for Nature and People. And we want to achieve that 30% of protection in land and that 30% of protection in the ocean with 100% of sustainable management of those spaces. And it is important that also we as a country can give that big step from less than 3% of our EEZ preserved to the 30%. And we have that commitment and we want to achieve it during this year. So we are working together with scientists, with NGOs, with communities to create new marine protected areas around the existing ones with very sound course of non-taking zones and create networks of these MPAs in the future. We know that it's a big responsibility, but we have the scientific information in hand. We have communities that are asking for more alternatives because the ocean is now not giving so much fish as they used to because of all the illegal fishing and bad practices from the past. So now we have also the responsibility of giving these alternatives. But I believe that the work doesn't end there. We have to see what is beyond our national jurisdictions. And for that, we need to approve urgently a sound treaty to conserve the biodiversity beyond these national jurisdictions. And we are way behind our goal to have it this year. So I understand that we as a planet, we are living a crisis due to COVID. And I believe that we should see the environment as a good investment, not as a burden to continue working in our recovery. It's an opportunity. We shouldn't go backwards in our protection of the environment. in this moment. Our recovery should be a blue recovery, especially for the oceans. And here we need to start working as up in the BBNJ treaty. Otherwise, we are not going to get that goal. So after visiting the Falkor and knowing the work many of you are doing to bring the ocean and the deep ocean closer to all of us, life changes. And I think you should know that. Thank you for that. Hopefully, I think this will be a never-ending story about hope, about women in power, about women in science, about change, about healthy, productive, and very resilient oceans. And this is in our hands. We should start right now. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Vice Minister. Thank you so much, Heidi. That was such an eloquent and passionate and compelling talk you shared with us. So often we know that Costa Rica is a leader in so many environmental issues, but hearing it coming from your heart and hearing the ideas and hopes for reorganizing the government to focus on blue investment, blue economy, marine spatial planning, including marine protected areas and networks, you are truly innovating while we are exploring. And thank you for sharing your wise thoughts with us today. We do have time for some audience questions, so we'll turn it over to some of our fellow colleagues in the science and hopefully some in the policy world to give us their questions. And I'm, well, while we're waiting for something, I will ask you, what was the favorite creature you saw while you were on the Falkor?
Oh, Kristina, don't do that to me. I'm a lawyer. I don't remember the scientific name of all of them. I remember I was looking some creatures that were really, really, really small, but you could see every single detail in the microscope and the screen, and that was amazing because you just see like a picture of the landscape, and you will see there is nothing there. And then you go deep and deep and deep, and you actually see life in every single sand in the bottom of the ocean. So I think that really changed the way you see life and the way you see the ocean. It's not only what you can see. Actually, our answers probably are in the deep ocean.
What is your advice for trying to replicate this experience that you've had in terms of helping to reveal for the policymakers, the decision makers, the leaders of the world, that there is life down there and it's all its beauty and infinite diversity and importance?
Well, having these discussions are important, even though we don't have the opportunity to be in person in the same room. Using all the technology to get that information to different decision makers and creating. I think we are seeing a new generation of policy makers that are really willing to understand better the science. And I think one of the most challenging aspects are the idea of having that scientific paper into key messages for the decision makers. So as long as you as scientists can actually identify why are you exploring, and I know that exploring it's amazing by itself, but if you also keep in mind that you are exploring to knowing more, to having a recommendation for changing the way that we are behaving, or the things that we didn't know, I think that's an extra point. If you at the end of your research and the exploration, you can say, okay, now we need to do A and B. That A and B in the right hands can change the world.
the why it matters behind the scientific research.
Yes.
That's we have a question from the audience on what do you see as the biggest limitation or challenge for protecting Costa Rica's marine environments? Is it science, technology, finance, capacity?
Well, I guess is history, maybe. In the past, we've seen the ocean as something that we can actually use without limits. And now we are seeing the consequences of that, or the ocean as this space where you can throw everything that you don't need. And then we are having all this plastic pollution in our coastal areas. So I think that change of mind is important, and it is part of the new generations as well. But obviously, we are a small country with 92% ocean, without working very hard in the last 50 years in the ocean, now trying to change that into action. So finance mechanisms are very important. Creating cooperation between different countries, learning lessons from others, it's important. Having these networks of committed scientists in an international level, it's important. We have the information, we have people asking for these changes, and now we need to make sure that the changes that we are going to make for creating new MPAs are not going to stay in paper. We need to make sure that it has some financial sustainability and that we have rangers to actually monitor the benefits of these new areas, and to have this law enforcement in the new areas as well. So we need to dedicate national resources for this and international resources as well. That's part of our work now. Identify where are the gaps and where we can have a hand for technical support or financial support in the future.
Well, you've wonderfully laid out the environmental challenges as well as the opportunities from finance to lawmaking to monitoring and verification. That was one of the questions that near and dear to my heart, of course, is areas beyond national jurisdiction. And I'm so excited as to what you've been doing there. But one of the questions is the ocean doesn't see national boundaries. How do you work with your neighbors to protect your coastal areas and your areas beyond national jurisdiction, the Costa Rica thermal dome, and to achieve your goals?
Well, for the Costa Rica thermal dome, we have been working with the CCAD, which is the Commission for Central American Environmental Issues. We are planning to create a work plan for the following years, trying to promote an initiative for the dome in the international level as part of international reserve. So we want to give that that initiative a push during the following months that Costa Rica is going to be leading the CCAD, this commission. And then we also have very strong relationship with Panama and Colombia and Ecuador in the South Pacific corridor, where we want to create a swimway to create the link between what is happening in the Costa Rica coastal areas, for example, with the hammerhead shark that travels all the way to Galapagos, passing through these 4 countries. So I believe that we have the opportunity now of creating these MPAs or these corridors in an international and very different way of how we've been doing in the past. But again, we need the treaty to have a sound legal basis, and to having all that technology and the technical support in order to create these new marine protected areas and these new cooperation schemes for the future.
Well, that's all very exciting. And yes, we hope to see you in New York sometime soon. Will you be able to stay with us for the rest of the panel presentation and discussions?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes, I would love to. Thank you.
Because I'd love to
Thank
come
you.
back and I'll give you a foretaste of equity and environmental justice across generations. I'm hoping I'll be able to ask you.
Thank you.
But that was, so I do think it is, I'm trying to see if we are, yes, okay. So I will give me great pleasure to transition to 4 scientists that I've had the pleasure of working with for the most part. Dr. Barbara Block, Dr. Erik Cordes, Dr. Randy Rojan, and Dr. Alan Jameson. I'm going to introduce them all, and then we'll call up first Barbara, then Erik, then Randy, and then Alan in that order. Dr. Barbara Block is the Charles and Elizabeth Prothro Professor in Marine Sciences at Stanford University. Her research focuses on how large pelagic fish utilize the open ocean, spanning from genomics to biologging. Dr. Erik Cordes is the full professor and vice chair of biology at Temple University. He is a self-described ocean explorer whose research is focused on deep sea coral reefs, natural hydrocarbon seeps, and hydrothermal vents. Dr. Randy Rojan is research assistant professor of biology at Boston University and the co-chief scientist of the Phoenix Islands Protected Area in Kiribati. She's an ecologist working on symbiosis, conservation biology, and global change biology with a focus on marine protected areas, specifically the Phoenix Island protected areas known as PIPA in Kiribati and various marine reserves in Belize. And our final panelist today will be Dr. Alan Jameson, who is a senior lecturer in marine ecology at the Newcastle University and has just accepted a new position as professor and director of the Minderoo UWA, University of Western Australia, Deep Sea Centre in Perth, Australia, a fascinating place. His research interests include deep sea technology to study deep sea fish, bioluminescence, and his specialty is exploring the deepest places in the oceans. So before jumping into the panel discussion, we would like to share a short video that illustrates some of the technology that has been supported and tested over the first few years.
It's sort of difficult to justify a marine protected area over something that you've never seen before. But if you say we should go protect these seamounts because these species of coral are there and these fish aggregate there and they're breeding there and these seamounts are connected to each other, or there are species on these seamounts that we don't find anywhere else in the world, that is a major justification for protecting them.
You start a trip with an empty box and a lot of hope and really no idea what you're going to find. And then dive by dive, the box starts to fill up. The ROV pilots, the scientists, everybody is working together to be able to identify samples, to collect them and bring them up safely so that we can study them and learn something about them. We are standing on Canton Island, which is the largest atoll in the Phoenix Islands protected area. The only place where there is a resident population of Kiribati people who are caretakers of this really special protected area, which is the largest and deepest World Heritage Site on the planet.
We have to start thinking about where the boundaries should be, where the protection should be.
The idea that you can go from knowing literally nothing to then making a map, taking a bunch of water samples, putting a bunch of sensors in the water, getting visuals down there, getting animals in your hands, preserving them so that we can look at them in every possible way with every possible tool available. It's just incredible.
We're looking at all of these interactions, from one species to another, the things that are living on the corals, how the corals are interacting with the ocean, and how the corals and the ocean are interacting on this mountain up to the coral reefs on top. And they are all connected to one another, some in very clear, direct ways, and some in ways that we're really just beginning to piece together because it's so complex. All of these interactions, all these little connections we can draw will help us to put together the whole puzzle.
This cruise is actually a beginning in which we're going to go out, we're going to study a high seas area and offer the opportunity for policy changes that protect a region. And by having this capacity to go to the high seas and consider what areas should be off limits to human industrial fishing, we offer an opportunity to build protected areas. And this is the first step. Through new knowledge, we can reduce ignorance and then translate that into action.
Wow, stunning. That's, you can see why many of us are so excited, even those from the legal world who are actually fascinated by all the beautiful, intricate research and details that you've been able to unveil. So first in the panel, I'd like to turn it over to Barbara, who's going to introduce a short video to tell us more about her work. Over to you, Barbara.
Hi, I'm Barb, but I think the controls of the video are in someone else's hands.
It's covered 3/4 of the planet, but it's very difficult to see beneath the sea. We haven't been able to understand where the highly migratory species go. The bluefins, the sharks. These are the animals that are really important to the ecosystems in the ocean. So to better understand where they go, and to understand the spatial use of habitat that's required to protect them, we really need to figure out how to follow them beneath the seas. I'm an animal mechanic. I study how animals work. While I was in graduate school, I was well aware that big fish populations in the sea, such as bluefin and sharks, were declining. And so I was becoming increasingly aware that we would need to start answering big questions. Because without healthy ecosystems in our oceans, we're all in trouble. And only in the last 25 years has the field advanced where we can actually make technology that successfully works under the demands of ocean engineering that's required to actually follow a fish in the sea. Working on highly migratory fishes requires going to sea here along our California coast. And once we go to sea, we first have to capture an animal and do it in such a way that we can actually release it again. So we have to work out the techniques of tag and release. My favorite tag is an instrument that we surgically implant in the tunas. It's called an archival tag. The tag enables us to geolocate the fish through mathematics by measuring sunrise and sunset and time very accurately. When I received the Rolex Award for Enterprise in 2012, it really unleashed our ability to do a new type of technology. Rolex provided funding that enabled us to link the ability of the animal's presence to satellite in real time. So we could then census when white sharks were here. Tag a white shark, we'll pull the decoy in with a fishing line, and if we time everything perfect, we'll place the tag onto the animal. So by tagging over 100 white sharks with satellite tags, we learned that they spend 4 to 6 months in the open sea. And when it comes to white sharks, because they're such long-lived animals, this type of technology is essential to saying what the status of the populations are. We live on a special planet. Earth is an ocean planet. The key to keeping the planet perpetual is building greater understanding of how oceans operate. We must act now and begin to put in place observation-based technologies and science methods and build the next generation of ocean conservation.
That was my way of introducing who we are and what we're doing.
Wow. And I would say it was your work on tagging of Pacific predators that inspired much of our work to try to create a new treaty to enable systems of marine protected areas in the high seas. We'll return to that later. For now, we'll turn this over to Dr. Erik Cordis to tell us a little bit about his work. Please, Erik.
There we go. Thanks, Kristina. It's great to see you, and thanks for the invitation to be with these wonderful people to talk about this today. I guess the question that we're trying to address is, how do we get people to prioritize the conservation of the deep ocean? And Jacques Cousteau said people protect what they love. Of course, he followed that with a lot of people attack the sea and I make love to it. But it was a different time. 100 years ago, Cousteau was 11 years old, the same age that my son is now. The deep sea was as impenetrable as deep space, as the planet, the red planet, our neighbor, right? It was an unlimited source of food. It had an unlimited capacity to accept our waste. But now our population is so big and our reach is so far that we're starting to reach the limits of our planet. Our carbon, our heat, our plastics are on the bottom of the ocean. You might have heard Lisa Levin yesterday talk about the trash dump that we found at the deepest part of the trench we were exploring off of Costa Rica. It was really a shocking sight, but it's something that, you know, everyone who's had a chance to sail on Falkor has had the experience with. So how do we solve these problems? By including new ideas from the people closest to these places, by making sure that before we go into new territories, we engage more voices, by making sure that we're asking the right questions and providing the relevant data for people to make the right decisions. We worked a lot in Costa Rica. My friend and colleague, Jorge Cortez, who's with us today, taught me that, and you heard Haydee say this before, that Costa Rica is 92% ocean and 35% of that is below 3,000 meters. So it's a deep sea country. It's an amazing place to work, and the ocean really has great advocates, like Haydee, Rodriguez-Romero, our keynote speaker. They understand how to translate science into policy, and Haydee and the administration has created an amazing structure to do this, something that I think will serve as a great example and a model that can be applied elsewhere. They're way ahead of where a lot of other countries are. But there are also a lot of problems in the world. How do we make this a priority for more people and more places? And I think that's where Falkor and Sebastian really have an amazing role to play and have been such valuable tools, by being able to show what that huge part of the country looks like, by going underwater and showing people what they own, the resources in their country. For Schmidt Ocean Institute to be willing to support expeditions that go into these places that no one's ever been and explore them and bring back the images, having the technology to make the maps, bring the deep sea home, bring the corals, the fish, and yes, even the trash back to people. Schmidt Ocean Institute, also NOAA OER with the Okeanos, OET and the Nautilus. They're so great at communicating in real time and in novel ways with artists, with professional outreach personnel, reaching people that scientists themselves have a very difficult time getting to. You even heard the technology group earlier today talking about prioritizing communication and messaging, and that's spot on. That's how we get people to care. As Jacques Cousteau said, people protect what they love.
Beautiful. And thank you for your inspiring words and your inspiring work and your efforts to bring the deep sea to life in so many different parts of the world. I would now like to turn the floor over to Randy, who I think will continue very much in your same vein of bringing home the deep sea that is in all of our backyards. Randy.
Thank you so much. It's so exciting to be part of this awesome symposium, and I think it's going to be really fun to think about how science can interface with management and policy on this panel. And I really, Erik and I are singing the same song here, almost in lots of different ways, right? Because we've worked together on some really amazing spaces. So, in addition to working on U.S. waters, I have the incredible honor of working with the Republic of Kiribati, which you can see here on this map. And it's a small island developing state in the equatorial Pacific. And while Kiribati is relatively small in land area, it's the 12th largest ocean EEZ in the world, with around 3.5 million square kilometers of EEZ, of which 99.5% is deep sea. So I've been working in this country now for over 12 years on the Phoenix Islands Protected Area, PIPA, which is in the center of this map in that little teal box. And it's a really special place on this planet. It's the largest and deepest UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's huge, roughly the size of California, and it comprises 11.3% of the total Kiribati EEZ. And just to put that in perspective, PIPA spans approximately 6 degrees of latitude and 6 degrees of longitude. And when you're on the largest island, the closest people to you are on the International Space Station. So PIPA was the first MPA in Kiribati, but even more astounding is that it was the first large-scale marine protected area ever created by a developing nation. The GBR in Australia was the first large-scale MPA ever, and then PIPA and Papahanaumokuakea were conceived at around the same time and are now sister sites as a result. And PIPA is now a teenager, 13 years old, and in 2015, 99.4% of PIPA became no-take, displacing heavy fishing effort that was previously occurring in the area. And it's pretty inspirational stuff. Could you click to the next slide, please? But there's more. 99% of PIPA is deep sea, but it was completely unexplored and unseen until 2017. It was completely protected before we'd seen it, before anybody knew what was actually there. So in 2017, there were 2 back-to-back expeditions, both part of the NOAA OER capstone program. The first on board the Okeanos Explorer, and then next I had the privilege of exploring the deep sea in PIPA on board Falkor with Erik Cordes, Tim Schenk, and many others, including Arantes Tekiao from Kiribati. The deep sea insights that we gained were stunning. We revealed new taxonomic records, new range records, ancient 1,000-plus-year-old corals, a wide diversity of taxa. And these dives for the first time really brought the PIPA deep sea to light. Images from these dives have been given to the Republic of Kiribati and showcased at the highest levels of government. The president, vice president, cabinet, the UN ambassador has all seen the footage produced. But perhaps more importantly, is that my Kiribati colleagues, together with my grad student, Brian Kennedy, and we traveled from village to village on Tarawa, the capital. And we showed this footage and shared PIPA deep sea wonders to over 2,000 school children and to many villages, lighting up traditional palm thatch mini-abas with a world that was previously totally unfathomable and inaccessible. And it was really powerful to watch the faces of village elders and school children discover the deep sea. And these images are an incredible gift. We worked with low-cost drop cams in collaboration with our Kiribati colleagues to complete the first deep water exploration in the Gilbert Islands. And we really tried to bring PIPA home, which is one of the things that the Phoenix Islands Protected Area is actively working on. And now, thanks to telepresence and live streaming, anyone with an internet connection will be able to explore with us when we return to PIPA and the US Howland Baker unit of the Pacific Remote Island Marine National Monument with Falkor in 2021. If COVID behaves. So while on the one hand, we're going to be sailing on a de-densified ship and a comparatively small science crew due to COVID, at the same time, all of those school children and village elders and the UN ambassador and you will be able to explore with us, and it's super exciting. Also exciting is that we're going to be exploring both sides of the equator. So both in the US and Kiribati, demonstrating the utility of the multiple cooperative agreements between our countries, the treaties of friendship, and others. And essentially what I love about this is that I'm working in my own country, but also the country next door, and it's all in the middle of nowhere, and I really love this neighborhood. So what I've learned over the years is that to protect the oceans, we have to democratize the oceans. And to build on what Erik just said, I totally agree. Jacques Cousteau still said it best when he said that people will protect what they love and they can only love what they know. But my own twist on this is that with 7.8+ billion people on our planet, we can love what we know, but we can't love these places to death. And sometimes because there are so many of us and we're changing the world so fast, we have to love and protect even the places that we don't know yet. And that's where conservation and policy comes in. And I think PIPA is a really good example of that. And I'm pretty psyched for this conversation. So thank you.
Thank you, Randy. That's for illuminating that we really need to love what we don't know yet, but we need to have some glimmer of what it contains, and the eyes, at least being able to extrapolate from one place to another with the inspiration and excitement. So now we'll need to go to Dr. Alan Jameson, who's going to tell us about his adventures diving to the deepest places in the planet. Alan.
Thanks. Yeah, so there should be a video popping up in a minute. There we go. Right, so this is just a video of some of our best shots from the deepest places in the world. There's some brine pool stuff in there, and there's a bit of Titanic and so on. But what I want to talk about a little bit is staying on the same theme as places we don't know about, and the whole backyard. I mean, the deepest places in the world are the big subduction trenches, and they tend to be, or they're formed at the edge of tectonic plates. So for every trench there is on one side of the trench, there's an abyssal plain. On the other side of the trench, there will be a country, there will be islands, there will be something. And 40 years ago, all of the, the deepest half of the ocean, all of the trenches were in ABNJs. And 39 years ago, they all became somebody's backyard. So I don't think there's actually any trench at all that isn't in somebody's backyard. So that makes it a weird scenario where the deepest points in the world, everything between 6 and 11,000 meters, feels really far away. It feels really remote, but geographically, they're actually all very close. It's just very difficult and very expensive. So the trenches do pull up a lot of problems. But over the last 10 years, we've gone from maybe doing 5 or 6 baited camera deployments in a particular trench to, in 2014, we did the Falcor job to Serena Deep in Mariana. That was a real step change. That's when we went up to 99 dives in 28 days or something insane like that. And one thing's led to another, to another, to another. And now, we always talk about how much we don't know about the deep sea, but if I could just articulate how much we didn't know about the Hadal Zone 10 years ago to how much we know now, it's such a learning curve. It's been absolutely fascinating. We've been the first people ever to go to a trench the size of the Himalaya, and no one's ever even taken a single photograph in it yet. And we've come back with 500 hours of footage and things like that. So progress is there. And also I'd like to reiterate the point that from the technology session, that the technology challenges no longer exist. That there, you just saw fly past just before the Titanic, was the deepest fish in the world. That was discovered on Falcor, 8,100 meters, and filmed in glorious HD. So the technology challenges aren't there anymore. The issue more is a financial one and a political one. And that's where I collapse, because I'm a scientist and I don't know how to deal with finances. But the rationale behind doing what we do is, I've always felt it's weird that historically we've always ignored the deepest half of the ocean. I know the abyssal plains are sort of horizontally or bigger footprint, but the ocean doesn't recognize these imaginary lines, whether it be EEZs or whether it be depth stratified lines. It doesn't. It's all just one big body of water. And the saddest thing is when we started doing the really deep trench stuff, we'd no intention of, or never really crossed our mind to do anything to do with anthropogenic impact or management or anything like that. But it became very obvious very quickly that you have to. I mean, all of the trenches we found trash at the bottom, all of them. Even the very, very deepest point on Earth is almost a no-go zone now because of the amount of rubbish that's there. So that was a stark realization quite early on that we had to accommodate that. And yeah, so there we go. There's the sub. Going back up. There's no reason why we can't go to the deepest places all the time. That's what I'm saying.
Fascinating. Technology is no longer the limitation. It's our political and financial commitment and willingness to partner with others to go boldly where we have no longer been, where we have not been before. Well, we're going to have some time for a bit of panel discussion. So I will ask some questions and then we're going to be taking questions from the audience. I'm going to skip down to the third theme that I had advised our panelists previously, which is the importance of partnerships for research, protection, and management. I think you all have experience with trying to put a cruise together dealing with the people on the other end of the cruise, trying to engage them in the research. I think we'd really like to know a little bit more about, for Erik, the challenges and benefits of creating partnerships and building collaborative groups in your cruises through Costa Rica or Kiribati.
Yeah, I mean, it's really one of my favorite things is putting together that team. You know, we all have experience in that. You're out on a ship, and particularly before telepresence, you have to make sure that you bring all the expertise that you're going to need. And so having those collaborations where all that experience, that expertise complements one another is difficult, and it's a big challenge to doing deep sea research, but it's also a great way to, you know, develop these networks and work with people that you really like and like going out to sea with. I think that it needs to expand. And I think that including the people from the states that you're working in or working near is critical. Like I said before, that making sure you're asking the right questions and bringing the right data back, and those kinds of partnerships are a little more difficult to forge. But I think it's really essential that we do that these days, or that we do that at all, to make sure that we're using our time effectively.
That's a great transition to Randy. I'd love to hear, I think we'd love to hear a little bit more about your work with the government of Kiribati and the people of Kiribati in creating partnerships.
Thank you. You know, partnerships are everything. Doing things that are truly collaboratively and in the true spirit of international cooperation is, you know, really the best way forward, at least in my experience with, you know, working with the Phoenix Islands. Everything we do, I mean, I'm even the co-chief scientist of the Phoenix Islands protected area because I have a Kiribati counterpart. And, you know, we really do learn from each other. And it's that two-way learning that it makes it genuine and brings multiple strengths to the table. It's hard to get assets out to Kiribati. It's so far away. And so speaking about it from a government perspective, these cooperative agreements, sister site agreements, treaties of friendship are all, you know, vehicles and mechanisms that can be used to help, you know, catalyze resources and assets and shared findings and shared effort across developing and developed countries. And I think that's a really important piece. Yeah, I think partnerships are also critical because true capacity building, you know, has to take on a form that is sustained and long-term and has to be two-way. And so, you know, working towards, you know, real education and being at sea together, right, which we did on Falkor and which we'll do again, and it's so wonderful. That's part of this partnership building. You build trust and you get to know each other as people, and then for years down the line, right, you have a partner working in the same space as you, and that you know, and that's an invaluable asset to everybody to be able to really come from a place of trust and have a real conversation, right? That's how you make real change.
Thanks so much. Barb, we're going to shift a little bit to partnerships between national and international governments. You've been trying to understand and protect sharks off the coast of California, but what has been the shortcoming and where do we need to go next? You're on mute.
Okay, so sorry about that. I think the challenge, you know, we're on a day when we landed a rover on Mars. So it's really a status issue for ocean sciences. You know, oceans aren't transparent. It's easier to see Mars and the stars than it is to understand how an iconic predator, such as a white shark, swims in the sea. So for all their public exposure, we don't really know enough about these big predators, and the questions we can't answer are super simple. How many are there? Where do they mate? Where do they pup? And once they slip beneath the sea, we can't see them. So we have to turn to our 21st century technologies, such as what we have on the Falkor. But even today, it's very difficult to get the key answers we need, but I think there's hope. We now have some new biological tools. We have environmental DNA, we have the traceability of genomics, we have biologging tags, and we really can take a census of the planet, and we can begin to see what we can't see. So I think to establish and create MPAs that are going to protect things like large white sharks, we really need to know more about diverse species and populations, how these animals move, and why are they in the regions they're in, such as the White Shark Cafe. So I'll just say that ocean observing technology is coming of age, and it ranges all the way from the ship and the ROVs to the biologging tags, and as well as the genomic technologies that are coming of age. And what we lack right now to see beneath the waves is we really lack investment in ocean science. So I would say that the assets we have today to do the science are as great as they've ever been, but unlike NASA, we lack the connection that people need to have with the oceans. They need to understand how important they are for their own existence and for their own physiology. And we have to do a better job of translating that in order to get the investments we're going to need to actually explore more and validate what we need to know about Earth's blue ocean.
Just a small job. Thank you very much. I think you've laid that out beautifully. Alan, we're going to go to you next in terms of what sort of partnerships have you found to be the most important in exploring and understanding and describing these deepest Haydee trenches. And Heidi, you're not off the hook. I'd love to go to you for after that. Thank you.
I think because of the nature of what we do is you know, it's physically very remote from people's everyday life and what resources people are familiar with, and it's actually very difficult to get conventional funding to do what we do, because it's it's such a weird thing to want to do, is to go to the bottom of these trenches, and it's very expensive, and so we've relied a lot on private finance, which is great to some degree, because it fits a lot of private enterprises' vision of these things. I mean, I would include Schmidt in there as well, actually, to some degree, but there's other private people who just want to do crazy exploration. So that's been a new type of partnership that's had its problems, and we've resolved a lot of these things because it's working with a different type of organization. And then the other one, which is probably throw a question back at you, Kristina, is the overarching governance of the sea is becoming. I mean, scientific collaboration, we do it all the time with everybody, but it doesn't really matter what country it is. There's a layer of bureaucracy between them and us. So you'll find someone you really want to work with, but that nation doesn't necessarily want a private vessel coming into your water. Sometimes do, sometimes they don't. And even in the last 6 months, we've approached 3 different countries, and one of them wanted 6 months lead time, one of them wanted a 1.5 year lead time, and the other countries said absolutely no. So there's no consistency to this. So there are opportunities to work with other countries, but there's a level which is way higher than my pay scale that is difficult to negotiate.
Yes, challenging to negotiate. But now we're going to go to a government official who may be able to answer that question better. But Heidi, I'd love to ask you about intergenerational and intragenerational equity, fairness to our current and our future generations when we look to ocean management. How do we turn the tide towards better ocean protection?
Wow, we can have a complete conference about this, because I believe that what we've been talking during yesterday and today, it's a good summary of what we can do to give next generations. I also have a kid, a 5-year-old boy, who is also asking me about what is going to happen with climate change. And when you have a 5-year-old asking you about climate change and his future, you have to be able to look at his eyes and say, we're doing something. And here I believe that working in a very collective way, as the ocean is, without borders, without distinctions on the different professions that we have, seeing what we can put on the table from science to the knowledge of the different communities. and from the resources of the governments. I think that's the only way that we can actually build something better for the future. It's our responsibility, and as everything, like the first step is recognizing that we have a responsibility and that this is a crisis, and we should start talking about climate crisis, biodiversity crisis, and the hope from the ocean to solve this crisis is vital. I do believe that we need to create not only these partnerships from the technical point of view, but also the partnerships for looking for the resources, the financial resources to act in a collective way. And I do believe that these new generations, they have that in their heart in some way. So they are asking for action now, and that's the only way. We need to act now.
Yes, we need to act now, both the youngins and some of the more mature characters with the white hair. But I would love to let the panelists all have a last word, including you, on what would your key message be to, let's say, President Biden and the new administration that for now is much more focused on the needs and value of ocean science. Heidi, shall we start with you, Haydee?
The U.S. should join us in the hack initiative. We should work together to build this 30% of the protection in land and the coast. I think we have the opportunity now to lead this treaty in the areas beyond national jurisdictions. And it's going to be important if we finally give an example of how we can move towards decarbonized economy as well, and see how the ocean as one can be a solution to our to our challenges now. The financial resources are important, and the science to take the decision are important as well. So this is the time to be united. And again, only with this idea in our heads, we are going to move forward. So this is the time to be united.
Thank you. Alan, then Barbara. Please, thank you so much.
I would say to him, do something and do something big. And I think that's just what it needs. Whatever needs to happen quickly. It needs to be big, and it needs to really shake up everything, because we can't maintain this level of apathy towards the ocean.
Amen. Barbara. Barb.
We need to clarify that the oceans are vital for human health. And we basically have to get it clear to our leaders that the future of Earth is at stake, and that we do have the capacity as scientists across this globe to unite and bring to bear the technologies of our time to better understand how it is that climate solutions will really be found when we better understand the blue part of our planet.
Beautiful. Yes, the blue part of our planet. Erik, and then Randy, please.
Yeah, I mean, Alan and Barb really said it, but the ocean is key to the climate. It regulates heat. It stores all the carbon, and the vast majority of the ocean is below where light can penetrate. And the largest habitat on Earth is in the deep ocean, and we don't understand it. And without understanding the biggest place on our planet, we can't possibly help maintain the health of our planet. And the ocean doesn't have any boundaries, like Alan said, and we need to re-engage with the international community and prioritize this as the #1 priority going forward.
Time to re-engage. Thank you. Randy, please.
I agree with everything that's been said, and I'll just add We need to re-engage and re-inspire. We really need to re-inspire the spirit of international collaboration. It's really important. We can't ignore smaller countries. We have to go where the ocean is, and we have to work really collaboratively as a global community. And I think that we're, a year ago, this would be unthinkable for the whole world to be engaged in a big single issue and trying to solve a logistics problem, but we're living through a pandemic, right? We've just proven to ourselves that we can, and we have this infrastructure to do something new and do something big. We should ride on the coattails and just do this for the ocean. We can solve problems together, and I'm really heartened by that.
Yes, we can solve these problems together, even though they may seem insurmountable at this time, as we're dealing with 95% of the habitat for life on this planet. Thank you so much to keynote speaker and our panelists, and to our audience who joined us today for this final panel of this beautiful conference. Please click to the final session link for closing remarks and a sneak peek for some thoughts into the future from Schmidt Ocean Institute Executive Director, Dr. Gjerde Firmani. And with that, I'll just thank you all for your beautiful and inspiring words. If we could just repeat this to the highest level at the United Nations, we'd at least be a third of the way there. Thank you.